The kitchen was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional drip from the faucet. Margaret sat at the worn oak table, her hands clasped around a chipped mug of chamomile tea. At 70, her fingers bore the map of a life well lived, calloused from years of gardening, wrinkled from decades of nurturing. The glow of her laptop screen cast shadows across her face, illuminating the lines of worry etched deep. She wasn't one for technology, but tonight, it was her only window into a world that had suddenly turned cruel. It started with a notification, a ping that broke the stillness of her evening. Her daughter, Claire, had posted something online. Margaret had only recently joined the social media platform, urged by her granddaughter, Lily, to stay connected. She'd fumbled through the app, liking photos of Lily's school projects and Claire's rare family updates. But this post wasn't a photo of Lily's latest art or Claire's new kitchen remodel. It was a long, raw rant, and the first line hit Margaret like a slap. Mom's a burden, and I'm done pretending she's not. Her heart stuttered. She read on, each word a shard of glass. Claire had written about the endless demands of caring for Margaret doctor's appointments, her outdated views, her need for help with small things like carrying groceries. She's suffocating me, Claire wrote. I can't live my life because I'm chained to hers. The post was public, visible to Claire's 800 followers, many of whom were mutual friends, neighbors, even distant relatives. Comments piled up beneath it, some sympathetic, others judgmental. You're so strong for dealing with this. One said, elderly parents can be so hard. Another chimed in. Margaret's cheeks burned with shame, though she'd done nothing wrong. She closed the laptop, her hands trembling. The kitchen, once a sanctuary of shared meals and laughter, felt hollow. Claire, her only child, had been her pride, her joy. Margaret had raised her alone after her husband's death, scraping by on a teacher's salary, sacrificing dreams of travel and comfort to give Claire a good life. She'd never asked for much, only to stay in her small home, to tend her garden, to be near her family. But now, she was a burden. The word echoed in her mind, heavy and final. Sleep eluded her that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories of Claire as a child, her gap-toothed grin, her endless questions, the way she'd cling to Margaret's hand in a storm. Where had that girl gone? By dawn, Margaret's hurt had hardened into something else, resolve. She wasn't just a mother scorned. She was a woman who'd survived loss, poverty, and time itself. If Claire thought she could air their private struggles to the world, Margaret would show her what transparency really meant. The next morning, she called her old friend Ruth, a retired lawyer with a knack for finding information. I need to know about Claire's finances, Margaret said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. Ruth didn't ask questions. She knew Margaret's heart. By noon, Ruth sent a file. Claire's house, the one she bragged about online, was in foreclosure. Payments missed, debts piling up. Claire hadn't said a word, hadn't asked for help, hadn't even hinted at trouble. Instead, she'd painted Margaret as the problem. Margaret opened her laptop again, her fingers hesitant but sure. She drafted a post, simple and direct. My daughter, Claire, says I'm a burden. So I'm sharing this for everyone to see. Her house is in foreclosure. Maybe the real burden is the truth she's hiding. She attached the foreclosure notice, a stark document Ruth had pulled from public records. Her cursor hovered over the post button. This wasn't revenge. It was reckoning. She clicked. The post spread like wildfire. Neighbors shared it. Friends called. Strangers commented. Some praised Margaret's courage. Others called it petty. Claire's phone must have been buzzing, because within hours, she was at Margaret's door, her face a storm of anger and tears. "How could you?" Claire demanded, her voice breaking. "You humiliated me." "You humiliated me first," Margaret said quietly, standing in her doorway, her silver hair catching the afternoon light. "You made our pain public. I just followed your lead." Claire's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in years, she looked at her mother not as a burden, but as a woman with her own strength, her own pain. They stood there, two women bound by blood and broken by words, the weight of their choices hanging between them. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, as Claire stood in the doorway. Her eyes, red-rimmed and wide, darted between Margaret's face and the floor, as if searching for words that wouldn't come. Margaret didn't move, her hand still gripping the doorknob, her heart a tangle of love and betrayal. The afternoon sun spilled through the window, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. And for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. "I didn't mean it," Claire finally said, her voice small, almost childlike. "The post. I was just venting. I was overwhelmed." She stepped forward, her hands twisting together. "You know how hard it's been, Mom. With Lily's school, the bills, work. I didn't think you'd see it." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. "But I did see it, Claire. And so did everyone else." She gestured toward the living room, where her laptop sat open, the screen still glowing with notifications. "You didn't just vent. You called me a burden. You told the world I'm dragging you down." Claire flinched, her shoulders hunching as if the words were physical blows. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was angry. I didn't know how to handle everything." Margaret wanted to soften, to pull her daughter into her arms like she had when Claire was small and scared. But the hurt was too raw, the wound too fresh. "You could have talked to me," she said instead. "You could have told me about the house, the foreclosure. Instead, you hid it and blamed me." Claire's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with a mix of guilt and defiance. "You don't get it, Mom. I didn't want to worry you. I thought I could fix it on my own. I've always had to fix things on my own." Her voice cracked, and she turned away, wiping her eyes. "You raised me to be strong, but sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm just drowning." Margaret's heart twisted. She saw it now, Claire's exhaustion, the weight she'd been carrying alone. But understanding didn't erase the sting of betrayal. "I've been here, Claire," she said softly. "I've always been here. You didn't have to carry it alone." They moved to the kitchen, sitting across from each other at the table where they'd once shared countless meals. The air was heavy with unspoken words, years of love and resentment tangled together. Claire admitted the truth. Her job as a marketing consultant was faltering, her clients dropping off as the economy tightened. The mortgage payments had slipped, then stopped entirely. She'd hidden it from everyone, even her husband, Tom, until the foreclosure notice arrived. "I thought I could save the house," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could keep it together for Lily." Margaret listened, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She remembered her own struggles as a single mother, the nights she'd stayed up balancing checkbooks, the sacrifices she'd made to keep a roof over Claire's head. She'd never let Claire see the worst of it, never let her feel the weight. But now, she saw her daughter crumbling under a similar burden, and it broke her heart. "Why didn't you tell me?" Margaret asked again, softer this time. "I could have helped. I have savings, Claire. Not much, but enough to make a difference." Claire shook her head, tears spilling over. I didn't want your money. I wanted to prove I could do it. That I wasn't failing you. She laughed bitterly. And then I went and made it worse by posting that stupid thing. Margaret reached across the table, hesitating before resting her hand on Claire's. You didn't fail me, she said. But you hurt me. And you hurt yourself by keeping all this inside. The conversation stretched into the evening, raw and halting. Claire apologized again, promising to delete the post, to make things right. Margaret nodded, but her heart was still guarded. She'd posted the foreclosure notice out of pain, but also to force Claire to face the truth. Now, they were both exposed, their vulnerabilities laid bare for the world to see. As Claire left, promising to call tomorrow, Margaret sat alone in the quiet house. She opened her laptop again, scrolling through the comments on her post. Some were cruel, calling her vindictive. Others were kind, praising her strength. But one comment, from an old friend, stood out. You're not a burden, Margaret. You're a mother who loves fiercely. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She closed the laptop, a small spark of warmth flickering in her chest. Maybe this wasn't the end of their story, but a painful new beginning. The next morning, Margaret woke to the sound of birds outside her window, their chatter a stark contrast to the storm in her heart. She moved slowly, her joints stiff from a restless night, and made her way to the kitchen. The laptop sat on the table, a silent witness to the chaos of the past 2 days. She didn't open it. Instead, she brewed a pot of coffee and stepped into her garden, where the roses she'd tended for decades bloomed in defiant bursts of red and pink. The garden had always been her refuge, a place where she could coax life from the earth even when the world felt barren. As she pruned the roses, her thoughts drifted to Claire. Their conversation last night had cracked open old wounds, but it also revealed truths Margaret hadn't fully grasped. Claire was struggling, not just with money, but with the weight of expectations her own, her family's, society's. Margaret understood that weight. She'd carried it for years, hiding her own fears to protect Claire. By noon, her granddaughter, Lily, arrived, her backpack slung over one shoulder. At 16, Lily was a whirlwind of energy and empathy, her dark curls bouncing as she hugged Margaret tightly. I saw the posts, Lily said, her voice soft but direct. Both of them. Are you okay, Grandma? Margaret smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. I'm getting there, sweetheart. How about you? Lily sat on the garden bench, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. Mom's a mess. She's been crying all morning, saying she ruined everything. I didn't know about the house, either. She never told me. Her voice wavered, and Margaret saw the confusion in her eyes. The same confusion she'd felt as a child when the world didn't make sense. They talked for hours, Lily spilling her worries about school, her parents' fights, the pressure to be perfect. Margaret listened, offering quiet wisdom and the occasional story from her own youth. She told Lily about the time she'd lost her job at the library, how she'd cried herself to sleep but woke up the next day to fight for her family. Life doesn't break you unless you let it, she said, her voice steady. And you, my girl, are stronger than you know. Lily's eyes glistened, but she nodded. I just wish Mom would talk to me. Or to you. Why does she keep everything inside? Margaret sighed, her gaze drifting to the roses. Sometimes, people think hiding their pain protects the ones they love. But it only builds walls. She paused, then added, I built a wall, too, when I posted that notice. I wanted to hurt her back, but I hurt us all. Lily reached for her hand, her touch warm and grounding. You're not a burden. Grandma, you're, like, the strongest person I know. She hesitated, then added, Can I stay here tonight? I need to be with you. Margaret's heart swelled. Of course. Love. Always. That evening, they cooked dinner together, spaghetti with marinara, Lily's favorite. The kitchen filled with laughter as Lily recounted her latest school drama. And for a moment, Margaret felt the weight lift. But as they washed dishes, her phone buzzed. It was Claire, asking to come over tomorrow with Tom. We need to talk. The message read. All of us. Margaret agreed, though unease settled in her chest. She tucked Lily into the guest room, kissing her forehead, then sat alone in the living room. The laptop beckoned, but she resisted. Instead, she pulled out an old photo album, flipping through pictures of Claire as a baby, a teenager, a young mother. Each image was a reminder of the love they'd shared, the life they'd built. She closed the album, her resolve strengthening. Tomorrow, they'd face the truth together, no more secrets. No more walls. As she climbed into bed, the garden roses outside her window swayed in the breeze, their petals catching the moonlight. They were survivors, just like her. And maybe, just maybe, her family could be, too. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the living room floor. Margaret sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, waiting for Claire and Tom. Lily was still asleep upstairs, her presence a quiet comfort in the tense air. The house smelled of fresh coffee and the faint sweetness of the roses outside. But Margaret's stomach churned with anticipation. Today would be a reckoning not just for Claire's words or Margaret's retaliation, but for the years of unspoken truths that had driven them apart. Claire and Tom arrived at 10, their faces drawn and weary. Tom, usually jovial, offered a tight smile as he set a bakery box on the table, croissants, a small gesture of peace. Claire's eyes were puffy, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked like the girl Margaret had once soothed after heartbreak. But now, the distance between them felt like a chasm. Thank you for letting us come, Claire began, her voice shaky. She sat across from Margaret, Tom at her side, his hand resting lightly on her knee. We need to clear the air. Margaret nodded, her expression calm but guarded. I'm listening. Claire took a deep breath, her hands twisting in her lap. I was wrong to post what I did. It was selfish, thoughtless. I was so caught up in my own stress that I didn't think about how it would hurt you. She paused, her eyes meeting Margaret's. But your post, Mom, it broke me. Everyone knows now. My clients, my friends, even Lily's teachers. I can't undo that. Margaret's throat tightened. I didn't want to break you, Claire. I wanted you to see what it felt like to be laid bare, to have your pain turned into a spectacle. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. I've spent my life protecting you, but you made me feel like I was nothing. Tom shifted, his voice low. We're both sorry, Margaret. Claire's been under pressure, but that's no excuse. We should have been honest with you about the house, about everything. He glanced at Claire, who nodded, tears welling up. We're losing the house. The bank's moving forward with the foreclosure. We didn't tell you because we were ashamed. The word hung in the air, heavy with shared pain. Margaret leaned back, her mind racing. She'd known about the foreclosure, but hearing it from them, seeing their vulnerability, made it real. Why didn't you come to me? She asked, her voice softer now. I could have helped. I would have. Claire's tears spilled over. Because I wanted to be enough. I wanted to prove I could handle it. That I wasn't weak. She choked on the word, her shoulders shaking. But I failed. And then I blamed you. And I'm so sorry. Margaret's heart ached, torn between love and the lingering sting of betrayal. She thought of Lily, asleep upstairs, caught in the crossfire of their mistakes. She thought of her own sacrifices, the years she'd poured into Claire's happiness. I forgive you, she said finally, the words heavy but true. But forgiveness doesn't erase the hurt. We need to rebuild. Claire. All of us. Tom nodded, his eyes earnest. We want that. We want to fix this. Not just the house, but us. He hesitated, then added, we're moving in with my parents for now, to get back on our feet. But we don't want to lose you. Margaret. Your family. The word family struck a chord, and Margaret felt a flicker of hope. They talked for hours, peeling back layers of resentment and misunderstanding. Claire admitted her pride had kept her silent. Margaret confessed her own stubbornness, her need to be seen as strong. By the time Lily woke and joined them, the air was lighter, though not free of pain. As they ate croissants and sipped coffee, Margaret proposed a plan. She'd use her savings to help with Claire's debts, not as a gift, but as a Loanna commitment to trust and accountability. Claire hesitated, then agreed, her gratitude tempered by humility. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was a start. When they left, Margaret felt the weight of the past day's shift. Not gone, but shared. She looked at Lily, who hugged her tightly, and knew they'd find a way forward together. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of Margaret's life began to shift. The garden still bloomed, but now Lily came by more often, helping with the roses and sharing stories from school. Claire called regularly, her voice less strained, her apologies replaced by small updates about her job search and plans to rebuild. Tom sent texts, too, thanking Margaret for her help and sharing photos of Lily at soccer practice. The loan had eased some of their financial strain, but it was the honesty between them that felt like the real salve. Margaret, however, still carried the weight of the online fallout. Her post about Claire's foreclosure had sparked a firestorm of opinions, and though she deleted it, the damage lingered. Old friends reached out, some offering support, others gossiping under the guise of concern. She avoided social media now, letting Lily manage her account, but the sting of being called a burden never fully faded. One afternoon, while sorting through old letters in her attic, Margaret found a box of Claire's childhood drawings. Stick figures of a smiling mother and daughter, hearts scrawled in crayon, brought tears to her eyes. She remembered the nights she'd tucked Claire in, promising the world would be kind. She hadn't kept that promise, not entirely, but she could still try. She invited Claire and Lily for dinner, determined to bridge the gap further. Over pot roast and mashed potatoes, they laughed and reminisced, the warmth of the kitchen easing the tension. Lily, ever the peacemaker, suggested they start a family journal, a place to write their thoughts and share them privately. No more public posts, she said, her eyes twinkling. Just us. Margaret loved the idea. After dinner, they sat together, each writing a page. Claire wrote about her fears of failing as a mother. Lily wrote about her dreams of college. Margaret wrote about her hope for their future. It was raw, messy, but real quiet rebellion against the digital world that had nearly torn them apart. As spring turned to summer, Margaret noticed a change in Claire. She was working again, a part-time gig that could grow, and she'd started therapy, unraveling years of buried stress. Tom found a second job, and together, they were clawing their way back from the edge. Margaret's loan had bought them time, but their renewed openness was what kept them grounded. One evening, Claire arrived alone, a nervous energy about her. "I want to show you something," she said, pulling out her phone. It was a draft of a new post, not yet shared. "I called my mom a burden, and I was wrong. She's the strongest woman I know, and I'm lucky to be her daughter." Claire looked up, her eyes searching Margaret's. "I want to post this, not to fix everything, but to start healing what I broke." Margaret's throat tightened. She nodded, unable to speak, and Claire pressed post. The response was quieter this time, but the comments were kind, some from strangers who'd followed their story. Margaret felt a weight lift, not entirely, but enough to breathe easier. That night, as she tended her roses under the stars, Margaret thought about strength. Not the kind that stands alone, but the kind that bends, forgives, and grows. She'd been hurt, and she'd hurt back, but she'd also chosen to love through the pain. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Lily stayed over, and they sat on the porch, sipping lemonade and watching fireflies. "You're not a burden, Grandma," Lily said suddenly, her voice firm. "You're like the roots of our family. We'd fall apart without you." Margaret smiled, her heart full. "And you're the branches, love, reaching for the sky." She squeezed Lily's hand, knowing that, no matter what came next, they'd face it together. Summer bloomed into fall, and Margaret's garden transformed with the season, its roses giving way to chrysanthemums in shades of gold and crimson. The air grew crisp, carrying the scent of earth and change. Margaret felt it in her bones. To a shift, not just in the weather, but in her family. The wounds of spring were healing, slowly, like a garden after a storm. Claire's new post had marked a turning point. It didn't erase the past, but it set a new tone. Neighbors stopped whispering. Friends reached out with genuine warmth. And Claire's clients began to return, drawn to her honesty. She and Tom moved into a smaller apartment, a fresh start unburdened by the looming threat of foreclosure. Margaret's loan had been a lifeline, but their conversations raw, open, sometimes tearful, were what rebuilt their bond. Lily, now a junior in high school, became a regular at Margaret's house. They baked cookies, tended the garden, and wrote in their family journal, which had grown thick with pages of hopes, fears, and dreams. One entry from Claire stood out to Margaret. "I thought strength meant doing it all alone. Mom taught me it means leaning on the ones you love." Margaret read it often, her heart swelling with quiet pride. One chilly October evening, the family gathered for a bonfire in Margaret's backyard. Tom brought marshmallows, Lily strung fairy lights, and Claire carried a guitar, a relic from her college days. They roasted marshmallows and sang off-key, laughter mingling with the crackle of the fire. Margaret watched them, her daughter, her son-in-law, her granddaughter, and felt a peace she hadn't known in years. As the fire died down, Claire took Margaret's hand. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice steady. "I want to do something for you. Not to repay the loan, but to honor you." She pulled out a small notebook, its pages filled with sketches and notes. "Lily and I have been planning a community garden, right here in town. We want to name it after you, Margaret's Haven. A place for people to grow, to heal, like you've helped us do." Margaret's eyes welled up, her throat too tight for words. She looked at Lily, who grinned, her face glowing in the firelight. "It's going to have roses, Grandma. Tons of them." The idea took root, much like Margaret's garden. They spent weeks planning, rallying neighbors, securing a plot from the town. Margaret offered her expertise, teaching volunteers how to prune, plant, and nurture. The work was hard, but it filled her with purpose. She saw Claire's strength return, not in isolation, but in community, in the shared labor of creating something beautiful. By spring, Margaret's haven was completely a vibrant patchwork of flowers, vegetables, and benches where people could sit and breathe. At the opening ceremony, Claire spoke to a small crowd, her voice clear and proud. "This garden is for my mother," she said, her eyes on Margaret. "She taught me that love isn't just words, it's action. It's forgiveness. It's growth." The crowd clapped, and Margaret felt a warmth spread through her, deeper than any hurt she'd carried. Later, as they walked through the garden, Lily slipped her hand into Margaret's. "We're okay now, right?" she asked, her voice soft but sure. Margaret smiled, her gaze drifting to the roses blooming nearby. "More than okay, love. We're growing." That night, alone in her kitchen, Margaret opened the family journal. She wrote a final entry. "We broke. We bent. But we didn't give up. That's what family does, it grows through the cracks." She closed the book, her heart light. The world had seen their pain, but it would also see their strength. And in the end, that was enough.